converting between the forms of a quadratic function. So we're going to begin by converting from intercept form to standard form. So at the top of your sheet is just an example that I've worked through for you so that you can reference. So the first thing that we're going to do is simply multiply the binomials, and then lastly we'll distribute the A. Example 1. So again, the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and multiply the binomials. So you should remember how to do this from when we it was unit 4, the first unit that we did. I can't remember the name of it, whatever. But we're basically going to double distribute. So I like to draw the arrows so we know where we're going. So we're going to multiply the x by the two things here, and we're going to multiply the 8 by the two things here. So x times x is x squared. X times 1 is x. 8 times x is 8x. And 8 times 1 is 8. Now we're going to put that back in parentheses because we have to remember our negative over there, which is our a value. Okay, now let's go ahead and combine like terms. So I'm going to rewrite this. So we have x squared. X plus 8x is 9x plus 8. So now we finished multiplying our binomials. So all we have to do now is distribute the a, which is this -1. So our final answer will be negative x squared minus 9x minus 8. And you have now converted that from intercept form to standard form. Okay, now I want for you guys to try the next one by yourself. So go ahead and pause, try it out, and press play when you want to see what you should have gotten. All right, so take a look here. This is what you should have gotten for example 2. Let's do the same with example 3. Press play when you're ready to see what the answer is. All right, this is what you should have gotten for example 3. All right, now we're going to move on to converting from vertex form to standard form. All right, so there are just 3 steps involved with this. You're going to square the binomial, okay, which will take us back to what we were just doing, okay? And then you're going to distribute the a. And then lastly, you're going to combine like terms. So this is somewhat similar to what we were just doing. We're just taking it one step further. So let's look at example 1 together. All right, so again, our first step is to square the binomial. Right here, we have x minus 9 squared. So that will simply turn that into x minus 9 and x minus 9. Okay, so I'm just going to bring everything else down. Now we need to go ahead and do our multiplication. We're going to just continue to square these binomials and multiply them together, just like we were doing on the previous slides. Okay, so x times x is x squared. X times -9 is -9x. -9 times x is -9x. And -9 times -9 is 81. Positive 81. Okay, so now we're going to put that in parentheses and we're going to bring everything else down. Now we know we need to simplify by combining our like terms. So we got y equals 3 times x squared. -9x and -9x gives us -18x. And again, I'm just bringing everything down. Now we're ready to move on to our next step, which is distribute a. So now we're going to take this 3 and we're going to multiply by everything within the parentheses. So that's going to leave us with 3x squared -54x and 243. Okay, and don't forget to bring down your +4. And now our last step is to just combine like terms. The only thing that we're going to be combining are these 2 constants at the end. So y equals 3x squared minus 54x plus 247. All right, you have now taken that from vertex form to standard form. All right, you guys try example 2 out by yourself. Press play to see what the answer is. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for example 2. Let's do the same thing with example 3. Pause the video and press play to see what the answer is. And this is what you should have gotten for example 3. Now we're going to move on to converting from standard form to vertex form. So there are 3 steps here. You're going to first find the vertex. You should remember this from the previous lesson of identifying characteristics. After you find the vertex, you're going to identify your A. And then lastly, you're just going to plug your A, H, and K into the vertex form equation. All right, so let's look at example 1 together. So the first thing that we need to do is find the vertex. Now remember that you find the X value by having negative B over 2A. Okay, so remember this is our A value, this 4 is our B value, and this negative 3 is our C value. So our B value is 4, 2, and our A value is negative 1. So that's negative 4 over negative 2, which gives us a positive 2. Now that's the X value. To find our Y value, remember we have to plug this X value into the equation. So Y equals negative 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 3. Okay, so 2 squared is 4 plus 4 times 2 is 8 minus 3. Negative times 4 is negative 4. So we got negative 4 plus 8 minus 3. And when we put all that together, we get 1. So the vertex, oh, I'm sorry, I wrote that really ugly. The vertex is, our X value is 2 and our Y value is 1. Now we know that for the vertex form, this is our H and this is our K. All right, the next thing that we need to do is identify our A value. A equals negative 1. Now we're simply going to plug these 3 values into our vertex form equation. So we know that the vertex form is Y equals A times X minus H squared plus K. So all I'm going to do is just plug these values in. Y equals negative 1, which, do I really have to write that 1? No. So I'm just going to leave it as a negative. X minus our H value is 2 squared plus our K value is 1. And you have now written that in vertex form. So this one's really easy. So you guys go ahead and try example 2. Press play when you want to see what the answer is. All right, this is what you should have gotten for example 2. Let's do the same thing with example 3. Press play when you're ready to see what the answer is. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for example 3. Please take note of right here. The formula is X minus H. Well, our H value was a negative, so that's a double negative, which becomes a positive. So it should have been X plus 1 within the parentheses. All right, now the last thing we're going to look at is converting from standard form to intercept form. So this is going to be the most complex, which is why I saved it for last. So I'm going to make sure that I go through step by step while working through this. So with example 1, the first thing that we have to do is determine what 2 numbers will multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. So remember, this is our A, this is our B, and this is our C. Now, actually, before we even do that, let me actually backtrack, because what I see are big numbers. So we want to actually see, can we simplify this before we even move on? And the answer is yes, we can. Because what we can do is we can divide each of these values by 8, right? So that will pull our 8 out here, and we're left with X squared plus 5X plus 4. Okay? And now we've just simplified this for us. So now this is what we have to work with. So now our A is 1, our B is 5, and our C is 4. Okay? So now, again, we have to decide what 2 numbers will multiply to be A times C. So A times C is 4. And what's the same two numbers will add to be b, which is 5. Okay, so when I look at this, I automatically think 4 times 1. 4 times 1 does equal 4. 4 plus 1 does equals 5. So those are our two numbers. Now, the next step is we're going to replace the b term with those two numbers. All right, so instead of writing the 5x, instead of writing the 5x, we're going to replace that with our 4x and our x, because our two numbers are 4 and 1. And I'm just going to write everything else. So does everybody see that you replace that b term with the two numbers that you came up with? Okay. Now, step 3, you're going to place parentheses around the first two terms, and you're going to place parentheses around the next two terms. All right. Now, for each set of parentheses, we're going to decide what term or what number or variable can we pull out of this. Okay. So what do these two things have in common? Well, I see that they have an x in common. Okay. So if I pull that out, x squared divided by x, I'm left with x. Okay. 4x divided by x, I'm left with 4. All right. So let that sink in. Does that make sense? We see that we have an x in common for both. So we divided both by an x and pulled that out. All right, now when we look over here, we see that these have nothing in common except 1. So I'm just going to pull out a 1, and that's going to make that stay exactly the same. Now, when you do this, you should have the same exact thing within the parentheses. If you don't, you need to go back and see where you messed up. All right, so now we're going to put the coefficients together, and then we're going to just keep the parentheses together. All right, so we got y equals 8. Now, when we put the parentheses together, we now have, the coefficients, we now have x plus 1. And now the second parentheses is x plus 4. And now, that is so ugly. Oh, my goodness. And now we are done. Okay, so I understand this is a little complex, so I'll get you started on the second example. Now, for this example, we don't have anything that these share that we need to pull out to make this smaller. Okay, so let's go ahead. We need to decide what two numbers will multiply to be a times c, which is 6, and what two numbers will add to be b, which is -5. So let's brainstorm here. Okay, can we do 6 times 1? 6 times 1 will give us 6, but will 6 plus 1 give us -5? No, it won't. Okay, what about -6 and -1? Well, no, that still won't give us -5. What about 3 and 2? 3 times 2 will give us 6. 3 plus 2 will give us 5. Well, let's look at -3 and -2. That gives us a positive 6, and -3 and -2 gives us a -5. So that's what we're going to use. Okay, so let's go ahead and replace our b value with these two numbers. So we have x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 6. All right. Now see if you can go from here and finish. Press play to see the remainder. Now to finish this up, remember we have to put parentheses around our sets of terms. Now what do these two terms have in common? They have an x value in common. So x squared divided by x gives us x. -3x divided by x gives us -3. Now, with this, when I look at this, what do these have in common? Well, I automatically think to pull out that -2. So -2x divided by -2 gives us x. And 6 divided by -2 gives us -3. Again, you should have the same thing within the parentheses. Okay? So let's put our coefficients together, x minus 2, and the parentheses, x minus 3. So you've now converted that. All right, the last one I want for you guys to try by yourselves. Press play to see what the answer should be. Okay, this is what you should have gotten for example 3. The two numbers you should have chosen were 4 and -3. All right, so hopefully you guys got it. Now it's time to work on your practice. Good luck.